So the other day I was playing with the Discord on stream and the topic of anti-heal came up, and I kind of just want to take the time here today to talk about that system, how it would work in Marvel Rivals. And basically this video, I just wanted to act as like a springboard for the discussion for this community. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comments about a system like this in Marvel Rivals. I'll give my opinion on it. I'll give my 2 cents on it. As a top 500 Overwatch player, as a current top 500 player in Marvel Rivals, I have a lot to say about something like this. I was competitive in League for a long time. I played some Paladins. I'm very well versed on these kinds of games and these kinds of systems. And so basically I'm just going to talk about anti-heal in Marvel Rivals for a little bit. You know, what is it? So like, what is anti-heal? So anti-heal is very simple. It's basically just the concept of like, if you attack an enemy, they're going to receive reduced healing for some amount of time. Either that's, you know, a couple seconds or as you're attacking them and then it goes away as you're attacking them. And there's different amounts of anti-heal. There's full heal cut, which is like they receive no healing, like on his bionic grenade. And then there's percentage-based healing cut, which is in a lot of other games like Paladins and in League, where it's a rough percentage of the amount of heals that you would get, and you just take off like 40%, right? For instance. To state my opinion on this kind of system in Marvel Rivals, I don't think it would work. To be perfectly honest, I don't think this would be a good system for the game, and I'll tell you why. So the first problem I have with anti-heal being in this game is that it would solve Rivals. What do I mean by that? Like, it solves Marvel Rivals. Well, so a big reason why Rivals is so fun is because of the fact that no one really knows what the best thing is. Like, we have our tier lists, you know, we have a good idea of what characters are good, which ones are bad, but for the most part, Rivals is not a solved game by any means. We don't really know what the best composition is. We don't really know what the best synergies are. We have a good idea of like what is going to get you results in solo queue more than others, but at the end of the day, we don't really know like what the best thing is for playing this game. And if you add anti-heal to a system like this, what that does effectively is like, if you think of Marvel Rivals as like an equation, right? As like this long formulaic equation, you add like a new coefficient to that equation, and it basically becomes the dominant coefficient. You're like, okay, just get anti-heal every single game, right? And that's what I mean, is that if you add anti-heal to a system like this, it's going to be broken. It's going to be an OP mechanic, right? Because healing is really good in this game. Like, no, don't get me wrong. Like, supports probably need to be nerfed across the board. Like, a couple of supports in this game, like Loki, Cloak and Dagger, Luna, Invisible Woman as well. You know, she's super overkitted. They have so much healing in their kit, right? But the problem is that if you add an explicit system that directly counters what we perceive as what's really good right now, that is going to become a meta thing to pick every single game, right? So even if it's on like 1 or 2 people, even if it's super situational, it's going to become a game of you need that character, okay? If like Bucky, for example, had anti-heal, you need Bucky every single game, right? And that takes away a lot of the fun of Marvel Rivals, is that we don't know what the best thing is. So if you add a system like this, it's going to be broken. It's going to be insanely strong, and characters that do have that system are going to become meta picks instantly, and that's really problematic. And as I stated before, I don't like the idea of adding something to the game that's going to just solve it really quickly. It's like, oh, okay, well, play that character like every game basically, and then you're good to go. Like, that solves a huge part of the equation of Marvel Rivals, and that's going to kill all the fun out of the game very quickly. Okay, so like maybe I'm playing like devil's advocate, right? Like, let's say we don't add anti-heal to one character. Okay, maybe that's silly, right? We should make it a system where we add it to a bunch of different people, right? Like, let's say 10 DPS in this game have anti-heal now, like of some kind. Like Spider-Man, when he webs someone, gives some heal cut, right? Bucky, when he hooks someone in, gives some heal cut, right? So let's say you do all that. Okay, the problem still remains is that the system in this game would be incredibly strong. So even if 10 different people had like heal cut, 20, let's expand it. Like, let's say 20 people had it. Players in this game would very quickly find out which one of those 20 are the best heal cut characters. Because again, the system fundamentally, if it were just rawly implemented into the game, would be this ridiculously powerful thing where every single person that does have heal cut of some kind would be analyzed to the bone, and we would quickly figure out within a couple days, like literally within a couple days. Like, that's how fast people are at figuring out what's really good, at least in solo queue, is like, okay, of the 10, these 2 are the best ones to pick, and you need to pick those 2 every single game. It doesn't matter how balanced it is. It doesn't matter, like, if the player base decides that a system like this is really strong, they're gonna figure out which characters are really strong with that system, right? So again, the first major problem that I have is that it's gonna solve Rivals too quickly, right? It's gonna make figuring out which character is the best character a no-brainer. It's gonna be like, okay, pick one of these 2 anti-healers every single game, right? Okay, so then maybe you're thinking like, well, hold on now, Nate. What if you just ban those anti-healers, right? Like, if they really are meta, there are bans in higher elos and Diamond Plus, right? You're allowed to ban up to 4 characters. Just make it so that you ban them. That's kind of a band-aid fix fix to the problem, because if you ban the anti-healers, then you're letting through what people think is like the most broken thing. It's like, okay, the supports are broken. It might become a thing where it's like, don't ban the anti-healers because we need them. Ban the supports, pick the anti-healers, and then the problem is solved. Or pick the anti-healers, ban the supports, problem solved, right? If you were to just say ban those like really strong anti-healers, right, you're still letting through the really good supports, and that kind of like defeats the whole purpose of this anti-heal system. Okay, the best anti-heal in the game is always gone, so all the best supports are still running free, right? The thing it was supposed to solve isn't even being solved now because we're banning it. So then it goes back to, okay, well, then logically we would not ban the anti-healers actually. Actually, we would let them through, and then we would just ban the supports like we normally do, and then we would just continue as is, right? That's the line of logic that would happen if you just allowed the ban. It's like, oh, the ban system will take care of it. It's like, I don't think it would. I think if you had anti-heal in this game and you had a ban system that currently is in Marvel Rivals, it wouldn't be a good fix for it. It would still be, you have to pick the anti-healers every game. You would ban the OP supports, and then you would just, the whole game would be solved. You know, a half of the team comps in every game would be solved. It'd be like, okay, ban this, pick that every game, right? Like, and again, I don't want that. And so that's my first major problem with a system like anti-heal, is that if you add it to the game, it's going to solve the game. It would cut the game's lifespan in half effectively, because now we all know what's good. Okay, so maybe your next question is like, okay, so far I've been talking about like full heal cut, right? So let's say you add heal cut that is partial, right? Okay, maybe anti-heal is too strong, like I was suggesting, like maybe that implementation is too strong. So let's just make it so that it's like percentage based, like in League or in Paladins, right? If you add a system like that, the problem I have with a partial heal cut system is that a lot of the times, I'm gonna be honest, especially in League, I've noticed is that it becomes kind of useless. Now you're talking about creating a system that doesn't even work half the time, right? If the game is getting bad enough to where you need heal cut, but the most heal cut you can get is like 40%, that's still 60% of crazy good heals going to the thing you're actively targeting to not receive healing. And it runs the risk of not being a very good system. And I think that's a big problem with League right now. I haven't played a lot of the latest season, to be honest, just a couple quick play games. But the problem with League is from what I remember anyway, as an ADC main, if you run into a game where you need anti-heal and it's a percentage-based anti-heal system, it ends up not really working that well. Like, it just doesn't do a lot, and you end up wasting a lot of time and resources on a stat that you still need, right? Like, there's like 3 or 4 characters in every game that are healing a lot, and you're like, okay, well, I need it, right? Like, I have to spend my gold on it. But the problem is that it doesn't cut enough healing. So it doesn't really fix anything. It just makes it feel less OP at the time, but it's not enough to really change it dramatically, right? Like, these characters are still healing a shit ton, right? Even through the anti-heal cut. And that's my problem with that implementation of this kind of system, is that a percentage-based system runs the risk of being too weak. And then it's like, why even bother, right? Like, okay, we shouldn't make a system that's too weak, okay? Like, that would be kind of ridiculous. Okay, so let's go back then. It's like, okay, more devil's advocate, right? Again, to further my point of why it shouldn't be in this game, I don't think it would be a good fit. It's like, okay, let's make it full cut for a couple characters. Like, let's spread it out. Couple characters have cut. It's like effective, or it's like a really high percentage cut. Okay, to balance this, let's add a counter mechanic to the system. Let's add like cleanses to the game, right? Cleanse is like the ability to remove any debuff to your character, like removing CC. Like, if you're stunned, cleanse will make you no longer stunned. If you're antied in this example, you will no longer be antied. Like, you will no longer receive heal cut. You'll just be, like, as the name implies, cleansed. Like, let's take Cloak and Dagger's abilities, right? Let's make them cleanse. Like, let's make her heal wall cleanse. Let's make her bubble cleanse. Let's make Luna Snow shift clap. Like, let's make that cleanse. Let's add counters to the system that we're perceiving to be broken. And so that becomes a problem in and of itself now, because now we're talking about adding another system on top of it. So we're adding a new system to counter another new system to solve a problem that I don't even think exists, if I'm being honest. And I'll get to that in a second, right? Like, the biggest point that I'm going to get to is that I don't even think you need anti-heal, right? I don't think it's a necessary system. There is so much damage in this game. I'll get to that in a second. But like, you're adding complex systems that aren't really needed to a system that isn't really needed in and of itself. And even if you were to say like, okay, let's say you need the cleanse. Let's say you need the anti, and so you need the cleanse to counter it. Okay, now it becomes, we're adding more coefficients to this equation. It seems like it's making it more and more complicated, but what's really happening is that we're focusing on these two things now all the time. It's like, okay, we've admitted, right, by adding in anti to a game like this, we've admitted that the healing system is too good, right? And so the developers, what that's saying is the developers like, hey guys, you should use this big number here, this equation, this is super important. Use it, right? And so everyone's looking at anti-heal now. And then because everyone's looking at anti-heal, everyone's going to look at cleanse. And now we're doing the same thing with anti that we're doing with cleanse, right? We're looking at who has the best cleanse abilities in the game. Okay, Cloak and Dagger, they have a bunch of them, right? We're gonna need to pick them every game, right? And then it just becomes like we're just looking at these two things all the time now, right? We're not even talking about damaging supports. We're not even talking about tanks. This is what the whole game becomes now. It becomes a discussion of these two systems, right? And again, why even have that? I don't think that's necessary. And now let me go into why I don't think that's necessary, right? So think about this. So Marvel Rivals right now, a lot of people are playing triple support. I don't think it's optimal. And the reason why I don't think it's optimal is because there are DPS in this game. You can still get kills through those defensive ults, right? Moon Knight is able to delete people through Luna ult, through Cloak and Dagger ult. It's ridiculous. Namor is able to literally one-shot people, like a true 300 HP plus burst, gone, deleted, right? The little bits of damage that are in this game, right? Like with Mantis and stuff, you can kill people through the healing in this game. That's just how powerful the DPS are. And so what I'm trying to get at here is that to add anti-heal to this game, it's completely unnecessary. I truly believe it's not needed in this game. There are so many ways to get kills in this game as DPS. Even the tanks, right? Strange's ult with his full burst combo deletes squishies, right? Magneto with his ult can one-shot Cloak and Dagger, like in the middle of her ult, right? Like there's enough counterplay in this game already that exists to not warrant a need for a new system entirely for anti-heal. Even characters that you would think struggle, right? Like I talked about in my tier list video earlier, Bucky doesn't need anti-heal. He can already follow up with his own kills with his ultimate. The execution range is kind of decent, right? Combined with his headshot and a punch combo or a headshot body shot or just a double headshot, right? Pulls you in, ults, headshot, right? That you're dead. There's no amount of healing that saves you there. That's insane to think about, is that a character can follow up on his own kill, even in a meta where a bunch of healers are needed, right? Like a bunch of healers are being played right now. You can still get kills through them. So it's a system that would be really broken if you added it to the game. It would solve the game, which would make it really boring to play. Every game would be about which heal cut character to go and like which cleanse character cut to go if you added more cleanse to the game. And it's not needed, right? You can already get so many kills through support ultimates, right? Now, let me like make sure we're on the same page. Supports are strong, right? Like, don't get me wrong. Like hitting top 500, just one tricking Invisible Woman is like, that should be evidence that supports are really fucking good. And they for sure probably need to be tuned down a little bit, but adding a whole system to counter an entire roster of characters is just something that is, again, it's not needed, and it's going to become a really toxic mechanic as well. Basically what I mean is like, if you have strategists in this game and you want to play a strategist, if there's something in the game that is preventing you from doing your job as a mechanic, like, oh, you just can't do as much now, well, that's frustrating, right? Like the DPS are playing the game normally. They just have heal cut now. Like some of them just have heal cut or like on their abilities or whatever, right? A true direct buff to them. Basically, to summarize my points as a top 500 player, it's not needed. There's already tons of damage in this game. You can get plenty of kills through plenty of different varieties of ways through defensive ults. It's good. Like that's good. We want counterplay to these defensive ults. So it's not needed. It would be so unbalanced to add, which would cause the game to be solved essentially, which would make the game very boring. It would very quickly dry up the amount of like viable things to do, at least in solo queue, which kills a lot of fun for the game. So if adding anti-heal is going to add a system that solves the game, which would make it very boring, and it's not needed. Now, the more fun solution I found before Ana was added to Overwatch, there was Winston. And now Winston's abilities were kind of weak. Like he wasn't very strong early. The point I'm trying to get here is that Winston would do damage over time to a group of enemies, and that acts as an effective anti-heal, right? It's enough damage to force you to be healed, but the healing isn't making your HP go higher. In most cases, if you were under attack over damage over time, if there were damage over time abilities, they act effectively as anti-heal. You're damaging a large group of enemies, and it effectively reduces the effective HP that people are getting. I think that system is more interesting because it's not true heal cut. So you're not screwing over the strategist role by saying like, oh, you just don't get to do your job as well anymore. Like, sorry, he picked that character, you're not able to do your job. It's like, okay, that kind of fucking sucks. But now it's like, okay, I'm doing my job to the fullest of my ability. But what I'm hoping for is that Johnny maybe adds like a damage over time effect, like a burn to a bunch of different enemies. And that's going to cause supports to still get their ultimates, right? Like they're still going to be rewarded for healing, but it might effectively increase the amount of kills you can get without ultimates. Like that kind of system is more effective than like just a raw heal cut. Is that if you just add damage over time effects so that the supports are still rewarded for their full participation, the DPS are rewarded for doing damage, and that allows for more team play. Now it's like, okay, I'm doing damage as Johnny, right? Like let's say like I'm burning a bunch of people. Now I have a bunch of team play around around at. It's like, okay, team, they're effectively receiving less healing. So Punisher, land your shots and we can get more kills. Or Bucky, you go crazy here, right? Like they're effectively getting reduced healing. That's why I think that would be a better way to do this than just to add, like if they could add more characters that have more strategic sources of damage, which would allow for more characters in the roster to be played. I think that's the strength that Rivals should focus on, is that I don't want to see a system that is going to clearly dominate, but if you add more subtle ways to counter healing, it's like, okay, damage over time, maybe nerf some of the supports directly, right? Again, like I said, they could use a nerf or two, but if you add characters that do more unique things than just heal cut, raw, or percentage based, that would be a more interesting way to deal with more supports in this game. So yeah, those are my thoughts on anti-heal. I don't think it's necessary for this game. It'd be too hard to balance. It would solve the game, which would be very boring, and it's just not needed. But let me know what you guys think. You know, it could be a very complex system. There could be different ways to add it. You could add it like Paladins does, where you have like characters can upgrade themselves over time. I don't really think that would work in Rivals, but you could certainly try. I mean, there's certainly stuff you could try to do. Yeah, thanks again for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time.
Thank you again to all my lovely patrons: Alton Praise, Bastion Saber, Basket of Clementines, Blue Bomber, Prism, Curse of Dragons, Die Chance, Dragonbjorn, Flint Hero, FYI, Garchomp, Garridan, Goblin Slayer, Gold,
HTTP Sam_com,
Hugh, Harold,
Morgan,
Nate's Basement Yordle,
Nico Moding,
Nutty, Roy, Seaman, Simply Pirate,
Smite video coming next Tuesday.
Sunny, Taco, Unseen Blade, Violet, and Waffles. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good one.